Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a senior and accomplished professional from North Carolina, USA, Mr. Roger Martin. Roger, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Roger is the Chief Executive Officer of ThriveMore Brands. He's the co-founder of two national franchise brands, RockBox Fitness and Beem Light Sauna. So Roger, before we talk sales and marketing and leadership, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Yeah. So I am a corporate refugee. I spent 25 years in the pharmaceutical business. So I started in branded pharmaceuticals with Eli Lilly. And that's back when I was, 22 years old. I'm 53 now. And when I started, I pointed to the top of the pyramid or the ladder or whatever and said, I want that job. And ended up working for 4 different companies, moved my family 8 times in 14 years all over the States. I literally lived in all 4 corners and in the middle with different promotions and different opportunities, and ended up in a chief operating officer role for a contract manufacturing organization that made products for other pharmaceutical companies that didn't have the capacity or were out of capacity or just didn't even have the capabilities. They maybe been just a research firm and didn't have the manufacturing capabilities. So I did that for a private equity firm. So I started with public companies, then I ended up working for a private company, then private equity, then even a family office owned pharmaceutical company. And then after that 25 years, I found myself just not enjoying going to work. I think we all, not all, but a lot of us hit that wall where we realize it's time for a change. It's just time for a change. And within 4 months of having that epiphany, and I was at there's a whole story behind that. I was at a conference in Spain and I had this malaise I couldn't shake. And I just realized I don't enjoy what I do anymore. And so within 4 months of that epiphany, I ended up fortuitously meeting a business partner, future business partner, and he had 2 boxing for fitness, group fitness studios. And I love mixed martial arts. I love boxing. I love live music because we kind of combined all this stuff. So in short, I left my multi 6-figure job, and on a Friday, after a transition plan, and of course, in a succession plan, I made sure I finished impeccably. I woke up on a Monday morning with no salary, no health benefits, no nothing, no 401k, as an entrepreneur, and jumped headfirst into this and started a company called RockBox Fitness. So he had 2 studios that were named something different. We renamed the company. I built the first flagship studio in 2017, and we started franchising in 2018. Now we have about 60 locations across America. And then in 2021, met another woman who had an infrared sauna studio. So think private room with a private infrared sauna in each of those rooms for wellness, self-care, weight loss, various health benefits that you get from infrared sauna, all in a very upscale, premium feeling studio. And so she had 1 location and wanted to grow, wasn't sure how, and wanted to franchise, wasn't sure how. And I ended up meeting her and doing some testing as far as customer acquisition, marketing, and even her sales approach to see if we could really scale her business. And we did. We were able to double her business in about 4 months. And I realized, okay, there's something here. So we ended up putting a partnership together and created Beem Light Sauna. That's 2 E's, Beem, Beem Light Sauna. And we started the franchise. I built a flagship store in 2020, early 2022. We opened that. I opened that, and then in later 2022, we started franchising. And as of today, we've awarded over 300 licenses, and we're in the middle of our current expansion. So by the end of this year, we should have probably between 40 and 50 locations open, depending on permitting and building times. And then by the end of next year, we should have over 150 units, and then it'll just grow from there. So
fantastic. Well, good luck.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's all roses and great. No, as you know, entrepreneurship, it's been a roller coaster ride and crazy at times, but that's entrepreneurship, and you have to be ready for that, and have to be ready to just to show pure grit to get through
I just love your story because
Yeah.
it reminds me of my own story, and I've written about it in my first book, where I'm 14 years older than you are. On
Sure.
1st of April 2003, I had quit everything, and I woke up and I said, I've joined the ranks of the educated unemployed.
I love it.
Uh,
I love it.
but more for that when we're not recording, I'll tell you
Yeah.
more. But let us talk about sales and marketing. That's an area that you know well.
Sure.
I'd love to get your perspective, Roger, and how has the landscape of sales changed in the last decade? And how do you think companies have been able to adapt?
Great question. I'll answer the second question first, and I will say that the ones that are willing to change
Mm,
continually reevaluate their processes have adapted. The ones that haven't have gone out of business. And it comes down to your first question of how has it changed over the last 10 years? The consumer, be it B2B or B2C, the buyer, the customer
mm.
is savvier. It's savvier.
Yeah.
The internet has democratized information. It has
Correct.
democratized education, and it's allowed access to unlimited information.
Mm,
And because of that, people are more educated in the buying process. They're more educated actually in sales and persuasion techniques that
mm,
could be used to persuade them to purchase something. Now, I
mm,
do want to be very clear.
mm,
Persuasion influence is a very positive thing. It's
mm,
you're identifying a gap, you're
mm,
helping someone understand where their current state is. They're going to tell you where they want to be. And then your job is to, if you can, if you can't, you should say, I can't, I can't help you, sir or
mm,
ma'am.
mm,
But if you can help them with your product or service, show them how that bridges where they're at to where they want to be.
mm,
And you have a product or service that can help get them from where they're at to where they want to be.
mm,
That's persuasion influence, because you're persuading and influencing them to make the right decision for themselves,
mm,
which also benefits you.
mm.
Where manipulation, which too frequently gets conflated with sales,
Yeah.
manipulation is wrong. And it's about me manipulating you to make a decision that is good for me,
Mm,
but hurts you.
mm.
Right. And that's not what I'm talking about. Not what
Right.
but too many consumers have conflated that and say, geez, I'm being sold, so I'm being manipulated. No,
Mm,
persuasion influence is about asking questions. It's about
mm,
asking open-ended questions with real empathy,
mm.
not trying to just wait so you can ask your next question, but let me really understand
Right.
what this customer's needs are.
Mm.
And if I can't help them, I'm going to say, I can't help you. Like,
True.
but I know someone who can.
Mm,
But if I can, then okay, well, tell me more about that. Well, what is the impact if you don't achieve this state, this goal that you're looking for? How will that negatively affect your life, your family, whatever? And I believe that how the process has changed is you can't just say, hey, this is us and we're really good and we're the best at what we do. Buy
mm,
our stuff.
mm.
That's people are like, whatever,
Yeah.
the message has to be today more than ever,
Mm,
has to be 100% customer centric, meaning
mm,
your copy, your headline, your creative, everything is about them, not about your company. Because anybody that's listening, newsflash, they don't care about us. They don't
yep.
care about our company. They care
Absolutely.
about solving their need, their
Mm,
problem. Yeah.
mm, mm. Well
So
said.
I think, yeah, but just
Well
customer
said.
centricity.
Yeah. What a great response. Thank you. And again, you must have worked and you continue to work with a lot of salespeople. What, in your view, is the most common sales mistake you see even experienced salespeople making?
Mm. That one's really easy for me to answer because it's so ubiquitous.
Hmm.
It's it's assuming, especially if you've done something for a really long time. You will ask, I will watch salespeople ask
Hmm.
questions
Hmm.
and not even listen to the answer because they're already thinking of the next question they want to ask because they've done this process so many times,
Hmm.
versus let me just pause and slow down and really listen to what the customer's answer is, because we may need to go down a different path and
Hmm.
discuss it in a different way. And people, or said another way, it's the same side of the coin. The customer will answer with something, and then the salesperson will take that partial answer and fill in the blanks and make a
Hmm.
lot of assumptions around that partial answer. When
Hmm.
what they should say is, wait, tell me more about when you said this. What do you mean by that? Tell me more about that.
Mm,
Explain that. Can you round that picture out for me? What else did you mean by that?
mm,
And those are very simple questions, but salespeople can get in a hurry. And I think we all can be a little egotistical thinking, "Ah, I know what they mean. I know I know that how this is going to
yeah.
go." And,
Mm,
and really the pros, and in this business, 5-10% of the people are making 90% of the money.
mm,
And it's because they're listening and they're able to use the customer's response to go even deeper into the customer's
mm,
pain and the customer's need analysis versus, yeah, I'm going to take this partial answer, assume, okay,
mm.
let's go to the next step.
Yeah.
They get in a rush.
Well said. Well said. Can you also, Roger, talk a little bit about any strategies that consistently work in overcoming customer objections?
Mm. So I'm going to go right back to my previous answer.
Mm,
Objections usually arise because we haven't done an adequate job of needs analysis and really understanding the customer's pain points,
mm,
where they're struggling, where they need
mm,
help, and where they're really trying to go, and maybe what they've tried before, what's worked,
mm,
what's not worked. When you get an objection, not every time, but 90% of the time, when you get an objection, it's because the customer hasn't fully embraced their own pain points, their own discomfort, their own displeasure with where they're at, because
mm,
we haven't spent enough time there. Because a close should be such a natural process.
mm,
Okay, deep needs analysis. We've identified the gap. Do you agree there's a gap here? Yeah. How long have you been trying to fix this? 3 years. So you've already been thinking about this for a long time.
mm,
Yeah, I have.
mm,
And what
mm,
are the consequences of you not, fulfilling this or changing this state? Well, I'm going to lose business, or, my relationship's going to go, or, whatever you're selling. And the close is at the very end. Okay, so we agree on this. Yes, you've agreed that you need to take action. Yes, you understand the value that we bring, and can you see how this will help you? Yes.
mm,
Well, where's the next step? Where do you think we go from here? You know,
mm,
it should a close always people always feel not al- a lot of people feel awkward going to a close.
mm,
That's because they haven't done a great job setting up. A close should be it should just flow right into it. Like,
mm.
this is the next logical, natural progression of this conversation.
Yeah.
The objections usually come up when we've rushed to the close and we haven't spent enough time, in the 80-20 rule, and 80% of the time
Mm,
on the customer and what
mm.
they need and where their issues are. Let's
Right.
talk more about those pain points and how is that affecting you, and
Correct.
what would happen, and tell me more about this.
Mm,
They're objecting because you haven't spent enough time here. No, you may get it a month. There's really only 3 objections. I want to think about it, which is the delay
yeah.
tactic. And that's a flight or fight
Mm,
type of, it's hardwired in our DNA, financial, but that is easily overcome if the pain is great enough. They will exchange money for it. They will exchange
mm,
time or money for it. And time
mm,
and money are equally interchangeable,
mm.
but they have to see that value first. And then it's, a third party reference. I need to ask my spouse. I need to ask my
Mm.
committee. I need to
Yeah.
ask my boss. And again, that's another delay tactic, because if
Mm,
you had done a wonderful job up front
mm,
during the discovery process and during the early parts of the call or the sales
mm.
calls, you would have found out who the decision
Yeah.
makers are and who
Well
needs to be
said.
there. So
Well said. And again, given your
yes.
response, I'd like to take it to the next question, which is, what is your philosophy on customer retention versus
Mm.
customer acquisition?
I think we spend a lot of time, my experience has been most businesses spend the majority of their time on customer acquisition, because that fuels the business. It feels great when you bring on new business. Everybody
Mm,
celebrates a win when you add customers and accounts. But we all know that, we've all heard this. It costs 5 times as much to acquire a new customer as it
yeah.
does just to hang on to a single
Mm,
a current customer. And so I do believe that there is an overemphasis on customer acquisition. Says the guy who focuses a lot of my effort on customer acquisition.
mm, mm,
But customer retention is, to me, it's a very simple equation. It is fulfilling the brand promise or over delivering on the brand promise,
mm,
because then what they bought, you're actually delivering on, because
mm,
you've made them a brand promise. You've made them,
mm.
your company, your product, your service, your brand, and that customer experience, no matter what you're selling, if you can over deliver on that, your churn, your attrition will be infinitely lower,
Mm.
because the reason people quit buying and they cancel a membership, or they go with another vendor, the only time people do that is when
Mm.
they're in dissonance with
Mm.
what they believe they were promised and what they're
Mm.
getting.
Mm.
When, the hardest person to sell, hey, any salesperson listening to this, or any entrepreneur listening to this, the hardest person to sell is somebody who is satisfied with the quality and the service they're getting from their current vendor or their provider.
Mm.
Good luck with that. Good luck,
Absolutely. Mm.
because people usually only change when they're in pain or in growth mode. So they're either in
Okay.
trouble or they're in growth, and in growth they need help, and in pain they need to get out of pain.
Yeah.
When their current vendor is delivering on time, sends them, holiday cards, knows their dog's name and takes care of them, and gives them extras when they can,
Mm.
and delivers or over delivers on the brand promise, that's going to be a tough customer to acquire. And
Absolutely.
you want to make that is just as hard for your competitors
Mm.
to acquire your customers, because you're over delivering.
Mm. Amazing. And I'm amazed at your response. Thank you. Especially given the fact that you're rolling out 2 national franchise brands, and you just told me how ambitious your plans are. So customer acquisition is far more critical for you at this stage. But thank you, great response. My
Yeah.
next question, Roger, is how important is the role of storytelling in the
Mm.
sales process?
I am ashamed to say that I really didn't learn the importance and the effectiveness, the criticality of storytelling till probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm.
And it has changed the way that because I'll still get involved and help write copy, help create, ad campaigns, brand campaigns. Even though I'm the CEO,
Mm.
every CEO should still get down in the weeds at times. And that's one of the areas where I will get down in the weeds.
Mm.
And it's fun. My favorite movie, I'm probably dating myself, but is the original 1977 Star Wars, the
Mm.
original Star Wars, it's just the hero's journey. It's
Mm.
Joseph Campbell's The Hero's
Yeah.
Journey.
Mm.
But it's, and the hero's journey is almost how every great story is told. You've got a hero, or you got this hero, you got a guide that helps them. There's always a villain. The hero gets punished
Mm.
relentlessly till finally he or she ascends with a guide's help. But the hero is the main character is the
Mm.
hero of the story, not the guide.
Yeah.
And in sales, so often we tried to be the hero. Hey, my company's going to save you. My product's going to save you. And that's happened for decades and decades, where now we're realizing, gosh, we've all really, as marketers, missed this. The customer's the hero.
Correct.
The company, the product is the guide that gets
Mm.
them there. And it took me too long to realize that. I'm glad it finally clicked, because when I just was on stage speaking at a conference this past weekend, and I framed my whole talk around how the audience is the hero,
Mm.
how they would win. I'm not the guy on stage and like, I'm the hero telling you what to do. I'm your guide, and
Mm.
I really weaved my storytelling around that, because I've learned the power of story. And it's one of those things, the teacher, reveals him or herself when the student is ready, right? The teacher
Mm.
appears when the student is ready. And I remember back in 2005,
Mm.
somebody who worked for me, actually, um, giving me a book on the power of storytelling.
Mm.
And I usually read every book that I'm given, right? And for some reason, I never read that. Like, that book got shelved, and I look back and I'm like, darn it, I wasted 15 years that I could have been, even more
Absolutely.
effective. But the student wasn't ready. I wasn't
Yeah.
ready. So
Yeah.
it had to be, I ended up coming across some other books and branding stuff that
Mm.
really explained it well to me. And
Mm.
and now,
Thank you.
yeah, for
Thank you.
sure.
I've got time for 2 more questions, Roger.
Sure.
Um, how do you approach pricing strategy in competitive industries like fitness and wellness?
I've read probably 7 or 8 books on the psychology of pricing.
Mm.
Some very fun books to read and some very dry material.
Mm. Mm.
But I pricing is an amazing tool. Like, pricing is a lever that is underutilized.
Mm.
And usually pricing is set to answer your question, usually pricing is set by most business owners by what is everybody else doing? What is the market doing? And that's not how to set you should set your pricing two ways. You want to set your pricing based on the value that the market ascribes to your product and the solution. So let's say, I'm in fitness, weight loss is a big part of fitness, and people will pay a lot of money for weight loss. Like we've seen, surgery, and now they're taking Ozempic and these shots and all these things, and they'll pay, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars to change their physical appearance, to feel more comfortable in their own body, which means you don't have to sell a membership for $100. You can sell it for $200. You can sell additional services for $300 or $400 or $500 a month because people value it that. But too often is, what is everybody else doing? Okay, let's set our price just a little bit lower than that and we'll get more market share. And that's the wrong way. You want to set your price based on the value. And the second answer to that question, second part of that answer is, look at your pricing options. Please don't have more than 3 options for a consumer to choose from. That's a confused mind makes no decisions. And then wherever you put that middle price, and there's, we won't go deep on this. There's just go on the internet and research it. But wherever you put that middle price, if you've got A, B, and C, and B is your middle offering, C is your premium offering, and A is your intro offering, wherever you put that middle price is where you're going to drive their decision. So if you want them to go to B, you price B really close to A. If you want them to go to the premium, you price B really close to C. And it's so easy. It's kind of scary, but usually what people do is, okay, A is $100, B is $150, and C is $200. Well, now that I got a decision to make, because those are all logical. Just make your pricing illogical so that, well, the obvious choice is this, and you'll really speed up the process and help your salespeople.
Well said. Roger, my last question to you, and you are a marketing person, a salesperson, you've got franchisees, and in the world of technology, my question is, how do you harness the power of social media for business growth, particularly for your new franchisees?
Another one that I learned later than I wish I would have. I remember Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a influencer that I follow, in 2013, watching a video and him saying, just start making content. Just pick up your iPhone and start making content about your business. And I thought, that's not me. That sounds narcissistic. That's not me. And not until about a year and a half ago did I start making content and have my own podcast. And I recently wrote a book, and I'm making content and publishing it about business topics and leadership and hiring and how to hire only A players and how to hone your operations team, because I always thought that's narcissistic. I thought, making content, that's for, young kids on Instagram, right? And it's not. People are looking for business leaders,
absolutely,
to help them not make the mistakes that we've made, that I've made, that you've made, right? So we have that knowledge. The gray hair I have is all of those hard lessons I've learned that I can help a younger person or a person that is less experienced in an industry not make those same mistakes. And so yes, the short answer is, start making content about, if you own a local plumbing business or a small restaurant, start making content about your customers, about their experience at your restaurant, about how you've got pictures of them on one wall because you love your customers. Those things are accretive. Social media, you're not going to make a post and your business is going to change. It is, you've said you've got 2,500 or so shows. It's a long game. It's a long game, but also it's a long tail, meaning once you get that momentum, it stays with you. So absolutely, pick up the phone and just start making content, and you'll get better as you go.
Very well said. Roger, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. I think it's so fascinating. And as you were talking, it just reminded me of my own journey. 14 years before you started it, I had the same kind of reaction when I was in Seoul, Korea, lying in bed in the Grand Hyatt, looking at the roof, and I couldn't figure out which country I was in. So came back and quit. And as I said, but thank you so much for speaking to me about so many different aspects about sales, so many different aspects of branding. And I think we covered a lot of ground in branding, marketing, franchising, social media, and of course, customer retention. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.